Hey guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today we are going to be checking out the Masters of the Universe new Eternia Skeletor, part of the Masterverse series. Yeah, so these are pretty fun stuff. If you are not familiar with what new Eternia is, essentially this is a line of concept figures in the Masterverse series. Now, the Masterverse line is essentially an open-ended line containing anything from the world of Masters of the Universe, all done in the same form factor. Up until now, everything's been from the Revelation animated series, but now we're starting to get other things in this form factor, and this new Eternia subset is a really interesting one. Essentially what we've got here is a new artist interpretation of Skeletor, but the design has roots in some of the history and development of the Skeletor character. So while this isn't based on one specific piece of vintage artwork, it is definitely inspired by some of the earliest concepts for Skeletor. So really fun stuff. When you rotate this around to the side of the packaging, you can see this new Eternia Skeletor here with like a traditional Skeletor head in the background. It is beautiful artwork there. And then on the back of the packaging, we've got even more awesome artwork of our bearded Skeletor standing. It looks like a forest on fire. It's really intense. Really fun stuff. So the artwork is awesome. I love to see that continue. I especially love the spine artwork there. And if you're somebody that wants to leave these in the package and line them all up, that actually looks really cool, but that's not what I do. We're gonna rip this guy open so we can get a closer look at the figure within. All right, we've got new Eternia Skeletor outside of the packaging. If I bring in the tape measure here, you can see the figure stands right at the 7-inch mark. And we got some really fun stuff going on with this particular figure here. First of all, let's talk about that head sculpt. Now, as I mentioned while we were going over it in the packaging, all of these new Eternia figures are essentially new artist interpretations that are based on some of the early concept art for the characters. And if we look at some of the earliest concepts for Skeletor, specifically from Mark Taylor, you can kind of see where some of this was derived from, especially in this really early villain piece that is now known as Demo Man, where he's got the beard attached to a skull. And on this new Skeletor figure here, you can see that there's a little beard sticking off the chin of the skull face. I think that's actually pretty cool. And I know a lot of people were like, why does he have that beard? Well, that is why. It is definitely tying back to some of the early concept art. Now, in addition to that, he's also wearing a helmet instead of having the usual hood over his head there. And the helmet is pretty cool. It's got like a two-tone paint deco, so there's some nice metallic purple on the front there with the more flat, deep, dark purple all the way around on the back. Some nice detailing there. And I do love that skull face with those glowing red eyes on that yellow. And the beard, I don't know, I think that is really cool. It's just something different for the character that we don't typically see. Now, this figure here is wearing this extra harness piece over his usual armor. You can see it's got kind of this classic bat motif there, which definitely looks like some of the earlier Skeletor designs. And that has got a fabric cape attached to it. Now, it's the same kind of fabric we've seen on a lot of the figures from this line so far. This one's got kind of some uneven slits in the bottom of it, which is pretty cool. And that is attached to this armor on the top. Now, it's worth noting this armor just sits over the figure's shoulders there, so it's very easy to pop it off if you want to remove the cape. And of course, in doing so, you can see it reveals a much more traditional armor harness for Skeletor. Some of the pieces on the shoulders here are kind of bent upwards. I could probably bend those back down in place. Maybe even warming them up a little bit will help bend them back into place. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So that way you can do Skeletor with cape or without cape, and it does add this new extra armor piece to it. It does appear like the belt and the loincloth piece are also brand new. At least they are not the same as the Revelation Skeletor that we've already got in this line. And it's really cool because it's a mixture of like the furry trunks with sort of the adornments hanging down there, like the leather straps. Now those are black instead of purple like we saw on the vintage toy. This is all like unpainted piece right here, but I think it does look okay. We've got new shin guards as well and new feet because instead of only having 3 toes, Skeletor has all 5 toes. Really interesting stuff. I think if there's one thing I would have really liked to see more paint on, it would definitely be the toenails. They are totally left unpainted, so the toenails and the fingernails are just the same skin tone color as the rest of them. I think it'd have been nice if those were black at least, or just had some sort of paint deco to them, because it really does seem like he's got a lot less paint on him otherwise, but I do still think this is a pretty nice looking Skeletor figure. Now, there is a lot more going on here that we can talk about with some of the interchangeable pieces. Before we get to that, let's quickly run through the articulation on this guy in case you are not familiar with the Masterverse line. It's a ball joint on the head so it can roll around, look left and right. You got the ball-like joints at the shoulders so they can go outwards, move forwards, and backwards with a swivel at the bicep, double joint at the elbow there, swivel at the wrist, and a hinge at the wrist. You do have a ball at the torso so the midsection can roll all the way around. We can also twist at the waist there. Got the ball socket joints at the thighs so they can go outwards, forwards, backwards, swivel at the thigh cut, double joints in the knees, which are actually very tight on this figure there. You got swivel at the boot cut, again at the ankles, and then the ankles can also rock side to side, pivoting up and down there. While I was doing that, I also just noticed he's not wearing anything underneath his loincloth. So there's our articulation. It actually matches up with everything we've seen pretty much in Masterverse so far. All of the joints do feel nice and tight, so you should be able to pose them around pretty well. Now, we got lots of extra things going on with this figure, which is really nice. First of all, he does include an interchangeable head, which is a much more classic Skeletor look. So, if you decide you don't like the helmeted head with the beard, you can always pop on this head with the classic hood, and I really like this head sculpt. I think this is awesome. He's got a bit of a demonic smile to him there. He's got those glowing red eyes. There's some great textures in the sculpt of the hood. And this right here, as it is, makes for a pretty great looking standard Skeletor in this line. Now, you can also add that cape if you want your Skeletor with the hood to have a cape, as we've seen him in the past. So again, because of these pieces, there's a lot of ways you can mix and match these parts to get some different display options. He also does have a couple interchangeable hands, so you'll notice that we've got 2 gripping hands, but you can also change it out for one of those wide open hands, and we've also got one closed fist for punching, so those just pop right out of the socket there at the wrist, and it's very easy to attach a new hand if you want to. Now, I'm actually going to leave the gripping hands in place because we got to talk about his accessories, which first of all, he comes with the Havoc staff, because of course he does. Now, this one definitely seems like it's a bit more like the classic toy, though it does have the bigger ram horns like the 2000X inspired one, or what we've seen basically from that point forward, but it is all purple, just like the original toy. There's really no extra paint deco on here, although there might be a little bit of a wash on the skull. It's pretty light, so it's hard to tell, but it does seem like there's a bit of a wash there. I do really like the sculpt of it. I think it's a great looking ram skull on top there. But yeah, you can hold on to the Havoc staff accessory, which is very, very nice. Now, in addition to the Havoc staff, Skeletor also gets himself a brand new sword, which is completely different from any of the swords we've ever seen come with Skeletor. Now, looking at some of that early concept art from Mark Taylor, I think it's safe to say that this is a direct inspiration from that old concept artwork there. So we can get Skeletor to hold on to that sword in his gripping hand. The left hand is definitely better for that. The right hand's kind of got that open finger there, which works pretty good with the Havoc staff. But it is worth noting he's also got a place on his back where you can store the sword on his back. So pretty cool. And this actually makes for a really nice Skeletor, whether you want to go with a more traditional look or you want to change it up and give him that bearded skull. All right, guys, it's comparison time. Let's go ahead and start by standing him alongside the Masterverse Skeletor from the Revelation series, just because I think it's important to show these 2 Masterverse Skeletor side by side so you can see the differences there. Obviously, the colors are completely different, so mixing and matching between them with the heads isn't going to work as well. You can also see some of the similarities and the differences, like the 3 toes versus the 5 toes. And I think it would be fun to stand him alongside Demo Man from the Masters of the Universe Classics line, which is directly based on that early Mark Taylor concept work, just to show two action figures of two concept Skeletors. And there you go, my friends. That is a look at the brand new Eternia version of Skeletor. Much like the He-Man in this line, I really like this Skeletor. In fact, I like this even better than the He-Man. I think both of the heads on this are fantastic, making it almost so that you want to buy two of these so you can display two very different looking Skeletors. You can get a really nice practically basic Skeletor out of this figure, or you can mix things up for your desired look. I love how the new Eternia figures are simultaneously paying homage to some of the early concept work while also doing something new at the same time. I think it's really impressive, and it makes me excited to see what else is in store for this new Eternia subset. So these figures are available now. They're starting to trickle into stores. I bought mine from BigBadToyStore.com. I will link to that in the video description. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and until next time.